Good morning, everyone. Well, morning for me at least. Let's jump back into this culture series, a series, I guess, if you want to call it that. But there's a lot to chew on. Last time in the last video, yesterday, I believe I got to enter education. I stopped before talking over entertainment. We are only at letter E, and I think it goes down to letter T, so let's just chunk through this. If you're not sure what we're doing here, what we're talking about, watch the previous video. Entertainment. Entertainment it's a good one, right? It's a bit of reprieve from the horrors of adventuring. It's the relaxation after witnessing terrible things. Here, you want to think through and address how does your culture, your society, your people, how are they with gambling? Is it legal? Is it illegal, right? Is it the Las Vegas Strip? Are there specific streets that are lined with casinos and what do you call it? Bookies, so to speak, those that are sort of trying to make a buck, sell you on anything. I know in my world, right, in one of my nations, Zemet, it is a nation fueled. That's where the economy is fueled by. That's what the economy is fueled by. It is fueled by gambling, so that can be a very important thing. Festivals. This can certainly weave into the calendar, right? Mardi Gras. What's the big one in Brazil? I forget what it's called, but you know what I mean. Wearing masks and celebrations. Dia de los Muertos. Is it a festival? Depends on, I guess for me, I don't know much about it, but depends on what Wikipedia says. But there can certainly be events. Things that people might take, very dark times or macabre times and swirl through that and instead give us sort of the opposite in a form of entertainment. Are there sports? Are there games? Obviously, we have a very antiquated example of this in ancient Rome, the Colosseum, right? What do the people do for fun? That's always a really big question. I know socially when I may have mentioned this in some of my other videos, I am a social chameleon. I'm pretty good among those that I've never met before, right? I'll go to events with my wife and I don't know anyone there. Maybe I've heard of their name in passing or something, but she can generally throw me off in the corner among a bunch of strangers and do her thing with her companions and her friends and know that I will be fine. And a big part of that is instead of coming to the table and sitting among them and eating some snacks and saying, hey, what do you do for a living? No, I like to ask, what do you do for fun? What are your hobbies? Because you never know. You might get something out of them that might say, oh, I'm into fitness, or I really like weightlifting, or I love board gaming. Now we have a common ground there, right? So it's very important. What do they do for fun? Especially in the world of 5th edition D&D because it's so combat-centric. And when you can start talking about and bringing about an NPC as an entire society and culture that has a lot to offer when it comes to entertainment, you create some diversity there, right? Because the fighting parts are easy. I said I would be quick. That was not quick. Environment. This one's pretty self-explanatory, but it's very, very important. What's the flora, fauna, geology, water? What's the biome like? Is it very... Use video games for this, right? When you transition smoothly from Elwyn Forest into Duskwood. And you can tell that this place is a haunted place. There's rumors of lycanthropy within. There's a vampire that lurks somewhere in that castle up in the north. This is a dark, brooding, foreboding place. And further north of that, through the caves, through the tunnels, you can take a train and head out into the Viking wildlands of snow and frost. But meanwhile, way down south, there's lush jungles and prehistoric monsters. And I like where you have these little pockets. I do this often, and I'm doing this in my own Silbarat. Little pockets where you'll have almost different worlds. That's kind of the point to me, is I have prehistory. Things have just sort of paused in time and they're stuck. The creatures are much larger. They're dinosaurs. And then you stick them into a world where up north or in a different area, there's high technology and steampunk and whatnot. And it doesn't seem to fit. But I like that sort of feeling. Etiquette. How does your group, your society handle etiquette? This is a big one because you can quickly offend or get on your side, right? These things can certainly from a gameplay perspective, sway persuasion checks and whatnot, because you've spent time understanding that country, that culture's etiquette. What do they do with dining? Is that a group thing? I remember we went to Madrid, Spain, and decades ago, I used to read about the siesta and the fact that the Spanish, they enjoy their food, they enjoy their people, their company, their time. They sleep in late. They work hard, but they don't work till late or whatever it may be. And when we were there, we were eating Argentine in an Argentine steakhouse, right, in Madrid. And I think our dinner was served to us at like 12:30, almost 1 o'clock at night, or 1 in the morning. That's unheard of. Now, I was born and raised in New York, so yes, that is one of, if not the most extreme example of a 24-hour state or city in all of the United States, right? Because it's sort of like a Vegas thing, the city that never sleeps. If you want to get a deli sandwich in New York somewhere at 3 in the morning after a night of fun, you can certainly find it, right? But in Spain, food, and not only did we eat at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, we sat there for like 2 hours. And remember, it's just myself and my family. We're the only ones that knew each other there, right? We were foreign to that country. We were visiting as tourists. And the people, and we're talking women, children, kids, everything. It is a very social thing. So really leaning into this etiquette dining, that's a huge, huge part. And obviously there's a million, not a million, but a bunch of other categories here. Grooming. Can the barbarian come in looking wild and disheveled, unkempt? Group functions, formal versus casual. What are some taboos within the society? Bodily functions. Can you fart in public? What is your behavior around offspring? Can you, maybe magic is allowed, but not magic around children, because there's some prophecy in place in this nation that says children that delve into magic too young can go to the dark side, if you will, right? Whatever it may be. Humor, satire. Can you poke fun at the nation's leadership? Will you be instantly killed and hunted, or hunted first, then killed? If you made fun of the, can you put on a play where you're poking fun at the emperor? I think you saw that in one of the Game of Thrones, right? Industry. What is this place known for, right? The steel industry from like Russia, diamonds in Africa, South Africa, or wherever it is, and so on. What is the family structure like? Extended family. This certainly can inform leadership because you're dealing with a monarchy, you're dealing with a certain bloodline, nobility. Do you have to be directly, blood related in order to achieve any level of status? But also, let's combine the extended family with the living situation. Are the homes just a bit larger because you have 6 to 10 people living in that home? Is it something like it would be Asian culture where you're sort of expected to continue taking care of your elders? You never set them aside and put them into, retirement homes or whatnot. No, you live with them, you take care of them. And as long as they still can, they will still cook and clean and provide for you as well, even though you're a grown-ass adult, right? What is marriage like? Is it arranged? Is it always male, female? Is it same sex? What are their stances on the many things in the world that are definitely coming to the forefront today in the real world? Okay. What is considered appropriate to raise your children? We've all been there in the mall with our family, and maybe our kids are a bit older, and you hear some demon spawn of a child on the top floor just yelling and screaming and kicking because he did not get his Jamba Juice. And you might think for just a moment, that kid needs to be smacked. Are you allowed to do that in public? Can the elders of your society, of your culture, can the adults that have no blood link, they are not related to this child at all, are they allowed to punish the children? right? But that also informs a certain level of security and safety. If there's children just running down the street, what is it? The rolling a tire with a stick, playing with dolls, and having fun and laughter and giggling in the garden. This is probably not a place that is about to be invaded by demons. Okay? Fashion, huge one. What are the clothing? I mean, and I keep saying these are big ones. These are all big ones. They're all very important. And notice how you can lean into just one and create a tremendous amount of depth and separation in your game from one place to the next. Fashion, what are the clothing styles, materials? Silks, no silk. They're half naked. It's all by necessity. All military are easily identified because they are given uniforms. That costs to be able to build things, but maybe it's also more advantageous and efficient to just build in bulk. They build the same 10 suits of armor simultaneously. But therefore, how many blacksmiths do they have working on that? Because notice, if you were to build, we don't have the technology that you have here today in the real world. You need probably that same person to build the same 100 suits of armor to have it completely uniform. Because it's difficult to have that sort of robotic aspect of it. Because each different person, each different blacksmith that crafts a suit of armor is going to have their own little nuance. They're going to build that armor slightly different because it's just a different human being, right? They might strike a little too hard on one piece, and therefore it doesn't exactly look, North Korean level of uniform precision or whatever. So materials are big, different social groups, just like you would see in high school environment, right? Do people sort of gather on various street corners or certain buildings simply by how they look, what their hairstyle is, how they dress? That leads into body modification. This can be a huge one in a fantasy world, something like a Warhammer Chaos, right? Can you go so far as to become almost half construct? Can you have what looks like, some sort of contagion, some sort of disease? Are you forced to sort of cut that off and amputate that body part so you don't look like some infected, pus-filled thing? But are you now forced to just walk around with no arm? But if the technology is in place, are you allowed to use magic to perhaps give you some Jekyll and Hyde look? Cosmetics. Is makeup, is it only reserved for females? What is its purpose? Is it to kind of put on that face so that you look more elegant and classy, attractive? Or is it only used by street performers? Is there some sort of god attached to cosmetics? The god of many faces, the god, the jester god. Okay? Foreign relations. Who hates them? Are they the nation that everyone wants to invade? Are they the threat of the world? And so on. Government. How does that come about? How do they choose, what is it? Jesus. Not that. Democracy. Communism, right? Is it sort of like I was talking about a little while ago, where it's a monarchy? Is this ruled, this place ruled? Is it a tyranny, tyrannical rule? What is the separation between church and state? Are we talking Vatican City? Are we talking a place that has such a strong influence of Catholicism? Obviously, it's not going to be that religion, but where does that play into things? I know in Eberron, you read about something like Flamekeep and Church of the Silver Flame. They have more pull than any other sort of politician, right? And now you can start NPC dropping. Who are the important ruling figures and what are the offices? Think of the Azorius Senate, the Boros Legion. Those are things that make those distinctly different just because you have one that sort of enforces things on the street and then another in the Azorius Senate that enforces the law through paperwork in the houses, in the courts. But that can be equally impactful and important because if they write up something that you've done wrong, whether you've done wrong or not, you can tell that PC, you're pulled aside for about a month. Looks like the quest is on hold. Now you need to fight for your freedom, and so on. What is the history of this place? I will caution you against this, as it's something that I'm treading these waters now. I've done a lot of research in what is it that the common man, the audience, my prospective readers enjoy when reading through their favorite world settings, world books, right? At least the things that initially grab you. Forgotten Realms has been around for so long that you kind of know whether you're going to be interested in reading more about Forgotten Realms or otherwise. But if there's a new world coming out, what is it that people want? And one thing I've noticed is, and this is a little bit of a digression, but it's important because, I'm really big on trying to give people fuel that helps them just be better creators in the world of D&D and otherwise. Be careful with starting your story in your world with 10,000 years of history. Try and crunch it down into what matters now. You can have that story in your head of 10,000 years of history, and then 6,000 years ago, and then 4,000 years ago, there was this great event, and there was a king who was supposed to be on the throne, but he was kicked off the throne because of blah, blah, blah. But if you can't figure out immediately, after reading every sentence, what does that matter to the group? How does that manifest in the world now? When my PC barbarian walks through the forest, what about that 10,000 years of history is evident? So, yes, you can create a diverse separation or distinction from one culture to the next by its history, because that history is going to inform how they are today, right? It can inform every other bullet point. What do they say? You learn from your mistakes. Do not repeat, don't let history repeat itself. If in ancient history, this is a place that was, for whatever reason, just constantly invaded. Every decade it was invaded by demons. The ruin of demons will inform what the landscape looks like. The ruins are still there. Everything is a little bit scorched. Fire. The portals that the demons came through, they are still standing. They are now relics and artifacts that people go to and pray to remember all those that died over those centuries. That is the history. The history of this place is demonic invasion. Whereas you have another place where the history is built on backstabbery and assassination of king after king. And, the last 7 ruling members of the ruling, council, or the last 7 emperors of this kingdom have all been assassinated. Well, that is a little bit of a difficult position to fill at that point, right? But just be careful with, in the gameplay setting at least, going too deep into history. Languages. This is a really good one, because every time you make a character, one of the things at the very bottom of your traits, right? Here's what they can do. Here's how you put their stats as this race, this lineage, whatever it may be. And at the bottom, it's like they can speak, read, and write Common, Infernal, and one other language of their choice. What are the languages in your world? But also, these things inform a DM, how they might want to use accents, talk, excuse me, and so on. Law enforcement. Are there guards standing at every corner? If shit hits the fan outside of the tavern, do the PCs have somewhere to go to? Especially if they were given peace ties or asked to leave their weapons at the gate. If things go bad, is it only the monk in your party that can handle themselves at this point, or what are their resources, right? But that also informs how well organized these are. It makes sense that this kingdom has a standing militia of 200,000 because the streets are littered with police forces. And then is there a difference? I mentioned Boros Legion. Sometimes there can be a difference between the guard. They are military, government controlled and paid, versus police. Maybe it's just a random retired adventurer, and so on. And then, is law enforcement honest? Are they corrupt? What's punishment look like? Right? I know that we went over sort of criminals and crime, but you can delve deeper into that with punishment as well. Laws. How are laws formed? How are they codified? How consistent are they? Does it seem like only one, this law only applies to those that wear robes, where clearly they're trying to push all of the mages and sorcerers and wizards out of the town. Right there. How consistently is it applied? What's the difference between criminal laws, civil law, and religious law? Those are very self-explanatory, but you can go down that rabbit hole for quite a while. Literature, poetry. Can that be misconstrued, or can someone sort of take advantage of the fact that they can... What are those, like spoken word, right? Where it sounds almost like a rap, where they stand up on a stage and they kind of, here, let me see if I can give you one. I'm going to make this up on the fly. I saw them walking dangers of the beast. There's pitfall and visitor. Do you know where you stand? What disease do you have? Do you care? Do you see? Diseases, they say, come to me. Look for the light, look for the sage. There's a wizard up above, filled with rage. He's a barbarian. No, he's not. He's a wizard, I say. I have no time. Either way, let's move on, let's move forward today. Whatever, right? I'm just rambling, but you get it. But imagine someone does that, and this is a place where, magic is sort of forbidden. But through that sort of poetry, they weave through the verbal component. All they need is somatic and material. And all of a sudden, that guy's casting magic and sort of charming the audience and getting them to empty their pockets. Livestock, mounts, pets, hunting animals, food production. I saw a beautiful post somewhere, Instagram or something the other day, and it said, one of the hallmarks of the goodness, the benevolence of an entire country can be demonstrated in how they treat their animals. I'll let that sit with you. Magical traditions. This is a huge one. We can talk about this one forever. But magic is, the world of D&D is steeped in magic. I mean, how large is the section on spells? How many classes? Wizard, sorcerer, warlock, paladin can cast spells, rangers can cast spells, clerics cast spells, druids cast spells, arcane tricksters can cast spells, eldritch knights can cast spells. You get it. Magic is huge. You can create enough distinction just on one nation has this for their magical tradition and the other nation has this, and that makes them different. Medicine, health. Who is it available to? And are we talking magic or science? Are we talking healing kits? Wrapping and bandages? Do they have hospitals? Or is it entirely divine intervention, clerics and priests everywhere? Do you need to be able to walk through the veil, walk up the steps in the front door of that large cathedral, which automatically has this scrying, divine sense sort of hollow consecration thing in place, protection from evil. And if you are not of the right kind, the right type, you are not going to get healing. Okay? Military. Are there any special units, special forces? The inspiring things for many in the real world, right? That, very rarely is it, I want to be a Marine or I want to be in the Navy. No, I want to be a Navy SEAL. I want to be Force Recon. Do they have, obviously geography can dictate this, do they have a Navy? Do they have an Air Force? What does that mean? I know this can sound very Call of Duty-esque, right? Modern RPG, but is it griffins with dwarven hammer throwers? Are there dragons that circle the city? One of my nations, Barenheim, the nation of undead, there are 3 Dracolich that roam the skies. They are defenders and protectors of the city. They are, therefore, the Air Force. That's it. You just need those 3. Music. Now we're dealing with more entertainment and arts, but specific to music, of course. But this certainly plays into one entire class, the bard. If this is a place known, what is it? Nashville, home of country music, right? You have ancient, not ancient, but yeah, Africa, right? And the origin sort of hip hop way, way before. We're not talking New York. I was born and raised there during the rise, or I guess the creation of hip hop as we might know it. But is it boom, 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 boom? You get it. But I if this is a nation that's steeped in music and history about that, that might be the single place where the bard can go to find himself a rare magical lute, right? Naming conventions, surnames, nicknames. Are people referred to only by nicknames? Yeah, I know who's you looking for. You're looking for Black Sallow. Sorry, is that his name? Devin. His name is Devin. Is it Devin Black? No, Black Sallow. Who the hell is Devin? You get it. Religious traditions. What are some rites of passage? This is humongous. This is one where I remember reading a sort of much heavier, much more condensed version of this, where someone had said, how does a group of people handle their dead? I just saw another video on that. And it was by one of my go-tos for education and life in the world, Jordan Peterson, and he was talking to someone else, and they were saying that one of, if not the greatest way of completely removing someone of their humanity is not allowing them to handle their dead in the manner they choose, whether it's burial or prayer rites or whatever, because it removes the essence of, everything dies. If it lives, if it bleeds, we can kill it. And weaving through this alone, not just the religious traditions part, but the death rites. There's a lot there, especially when you're dealing with a game that has necromancy and the ability to have things persist beyond life, right? What are some daily, weekly practices? Mythology. Marriage goes back into it again. Is it a religious thing? Are the gods watching over you, otherwise you will anger them? Or is it purely a romance thing, which leads me into romance? Casual sex, prostitution, right? Courtesans, escorts, male and female, same sex, things like this. Is it considered taboo, right? Sweden handles it very differently than America. What do they say on TV? You can have someone get their head cut off on a Netflix show, but if you show a boob, the rating system goes nuts. Courtship dating. What is considered attractive? Is it based on classes? And I'm talking the actual 12 classes in the player's handbook. Being able to have a big forearms, big wrists, strong hands, tall, looking like Mountain from Game of Thrones, wielding a giant hammer, full armor, knowing that you can protect yourself and others. Is that considered attractive? Is it purely physical attraction? There used to be something called like comeliness, right? Or charisma used to be a certain element of physical attraction, right? Do you look like Angelina Jolie and Salma Hayek and Jennifer Aniston and Gal Gadot? Or do you look like a smashed potato? Whatever. Secret societies and mystery cults. I can't tell you too much about that one, because if I did, what are the social classes? Is it just simply nobility and royalty? And then you have, goes from there, or how far do you go down that? Subcultures. We can take this whole list and go through it all again. People that live in the same kingdom, yet they have their own entire take on etiquette and body modification that is all considered taboo from the whole. Superstitions. This is a good one. One thing I do in a lot of my towns, cities, settlements, areas, entire kingdoms, continents is I create these little charts of what are the rumors, what are the mythologies, what are the myths, legends, and superstitions. Because there's a great phrase one of my DMs once said, and it was like, there was enough horror and sort of real world threat that even though that threat is gone, the local populace's superstition had overridden their sense of adventure. So even though there was the chance that there's a rare magical artifact that can save their world hidden away in that cave, the superstition of what's in that cave surrounding it was enough to keep everyone away. And finally, you have technology, transportation. Those two alone, look at Eberron. Sometimes they go hand in hand. Trains and railroads and steam and flying ships and elementals powering it. But technology trade, or technology and transportation, and then finally you have trade, imports, exports. What do they have to offer to the world, and what do they need to go out and hunt for or steal from others, and so on? What value, material things, can the PCs bring into this culture, this kingdom, that's going to be worth a damn? I think that's it. Because my coffee is almost there. So I got through it. I don't know, probably 40 freaking minutes, but I got through it. I'll see you guys soon. Take care.